We're about to dig into this really powerful, century-old idea about our emotions from a writer named William Walker Atkinson. And you'll see how surprisingly useful it is for our lives right now.
So, let me ask you a question. Do your emotions ever feel automatic? Like a sudden wave of anger or anxiety just washes over you, and it feels completely out of your control? That's a super common feeling, that we're all just passengers on this emotional ride we never even chose.
But what if that isn't the whole story? What if our most common emotions aren't just these random events that happen to us, but are actually habits that we've learned over time? That's the core idea we're going to unpack today.
And here's the key insight from Atkinson. Our emotions can actually be trained. Yeah, just like we learn to ride a bike or type on a keyboard, our emotional responses can become these deeply ingrained habits just from sheer repetition.
Okay, so how does this actually work? Well, it all comes down to something we can call the repetition effect.
An emotional habit is basically any response that gets easier and more automatic every single time we do it. The more you feel a certain way, the easier it is to feel that way again. Until, poof, it's second nature. You don't even think about it.
Atkinson built his entire argument on this really simple psychological rule: emotions deepen by repetition. Think about it like a path in a forest. The very first time you walk it, it's kind of tough, right? But the 100th time, that path is clear, it's worn in, and it's just easy to follow. Our emotional responses work the exact same way.
He had this brilliant analogy for it. He said the mind is like a clean sheet of paper. The first time you feel a really strong emotion, it's like you're making a sharp crease in that paper. The next time something similar happens, the mind just naturally finds it easier to fold along that very same crease.
And this shows you exactly why the stakes are so high. The absolute best time to change an emotional response is right at the beginning, before that little crease becomes a deep, permanent fold. Because every single repetition just makes the habit stronger, and that much harder to change down the line.
So, what do these emotional habits actually look like in real life? Well, Atkinson pointed out a few common loops that a lot of us can get stuck in. He called out things like worry, anger, jealousy, and a habit he called fault-finding, which we'd probably call nagging or just being critical. Each of these can start out really small, but with enough repetition, they can totally grow to color a person's entire view of the world. Let's just take worry for a second. That habit often starts with legit big things to be concerned about. But as that mental crease gets deeper, the mind gets so good at the act of worrying that it starts looking for smaller and smaller things to feed on, until even tiny little trifles can cause a ton of distress.
And it's the same thing with fault-finding. Every time we indulge in it, that habit gets stronger. Atkinson said it's like the habit sends out another little root, fastening itself more tightly to the mind, until it just becomes our automatic way of seeing everything.
Okay, so if these are just well-worn habits, how do we actually change them? This is where the strategy gets really interesting. It's not about fighting the emotion head-on.
Atkinson argued that trying to fight a negative emotion directly, well, it often just gives it more energy and makes it stronger. It's like telling someone, whatever you do, don't think of a pink elephant. What's the first thing you do? You think of a pink elephant. The smarter move is to starve the negative habit of your attention by actively and intentionally cultivating its opposite.
And what's so fascinating here is that this 100-year-old idea lines up perfectly with modern psychology. Today we call this breaking the habit loop, the whole cue, routine, reward cycle. The secret isn't to get rid of the cue that triggers you. It's about consciously swapping out that negative routine for a better one.
So the crucial point is this. Your energy is so much better spent building a new, desired habit than it is wrestling with the old, unwanted one. You're basically creating a new path in the forest, a new crease in the paper.
So let's make this really practical. I'm going to walk you through a simple technique you can use to reset an emotional loop the moment you feel it starting.
We're just going to call it the emotion loop reset. Think of it like a mental circuit breaker you can flip anytime you feel yourself getting pulled into one of those negative spirals.
It's a really simple grounding technique. So, first, you just have to notice you're in a loop. That's the hardest part. Second, you pause and mentally just say, stop. Then, you start engaging your senses. Name 5 things you can actually see around you. Next, name 4 things you can physically feel, like your feet on the floor or the texture of your shirt. And finally, name 3 things you can hear.
So why does this work? It's beautifully simple. Your brain actually can't get lost in an internal worry spiral while it's busy processing real-time information from the outside world. This technique literally pulls your focus out of the thought loop and anchors you right back here in the present moment. And this practice reinforces a really profound idea. You are not the anger. You are not the worry. You are not the jealousy. You are the one who is aware of those feelings. And creating that tiny bit of space, that awareness, that's the first step to choosing a different response. So let's bring all this together. What are the key things to walk away with?
First, just remember that your recurring emotional states can function exactly like habits. Second, know that these habits get stronger every single time you repeat them. And third, and this is the most important part, you have the power to change them, not by fighting them, but by consciously interrupting the pattern and replacing that old response with a new one. So this really leaves us with a question. Knowing that you can create new emotional pathways, what new emotional habit will you begin to build today? The next natural step on this journey is understanding the power of your will, which is what we explore in our next explainer. You can find it and all the others in the full playlist. Thanks for joining us.